The city of Viridia, with its ivy-covered alleyways and scent of old books and rain-soaked cobblestones, was a place of a million forgotten dreams. Hidden behind time-worn buildings and humming cafes stood a modest little shop with a brass bell on the door and curtains stitched by hand. It was called The Last Stitch. Elara owned that shop. A woman of 47, she was the kind of person who moved through life with quiet dignity. Her presence was unassuming, like the soft rustle of silk, easy to overlook, but unforgettable once noticed. With fingers that stitched as though they were painting, she mended forgotten garments and transformed discarded fabric into heirlooms. Her work was love threaded into form. Her daughter, Lily, once called her a magician who healed time through cloth. Alara's life was stitched together by three threads. The first was her work. Sewing wasn't a job, it was a devotion. She believed every torn seam carried a story, every faded fabric held memory. To Elara, to mend was not to fix, but to honor. She would sit in the amber glow of the afternoon sun, each stitch accompanied by the faint hum of her favorite classical records. Her tiny shop had become a haven for misfits, clothes and people alike. Strangers entered with broken things but left with something whole. That was her gift. The second thread was her friendship with Chloe, a whirlwind of a woman. Chloe was loud, fierce, and relentless in her ambition. If Elara was water, Chloe was fire. They had been best friends since childhood, two souls who balanced each other like light and shadow. When they were 12, they made a pact under a cherry blossom tree. One day, they'd build something beautiful together. Years later, that dream was reborn as Threads of Time. Elara designed, Chloe sold. It was perfect for a time. Elara would sit by her window, the golden afternoon light falling across her sketches, while Chloe bustled about in heels, networking and pitching their work to boutiques. Their dynamic was symphonic, one heart, two melodies. People said their pieces had soul. The third thread was more fragile, hidden deep in Alara's heart. Marcus. Marcus had once been Thomas's best friend. Thomas, Ilara's late husband, was a kind, solid man who had passed away 10 years ago, leaving Elara to raise Lily alone. Marcus had stepped into the vacuum of grief like a gentle wind. He was a professor of history, a man who loved dusty archives and candlelit corners. He brought Elara books, shared long, quiet evenings, and listened like few ever had. He had a habit of brushing his fingers over old spines and speaking of time as if it were a living being. With him, the past felt alive, and so did she. Over the years, Elara fell in love with him, not in a thunderous, wild way, but like roots growing quietly beneath the earth. She never confessed it. She didn't need to. To love, in her eyes, was to cherish without demand. She carried that love like a folded letter, never mailed, but never forgotten. But time, like thread, frays. It started with whispers. Chloe began talking about scaling up, finding investors, and franchising. She brought her daughter, Fiona, into the business. Fiona was sharp, ambitious, and icy. Where Chloe had warmth under the fire, Fiona had only frost. She saw Elara's designs not as art, but as inefficiency. Elara tried to stay hopeful. She told herself it was just growing pains. But the workshop that once echoed with laughter turned sterile. Chloe stopped showing Elara the books. Fiona changed production methods, sourcing cheaper fabrics. Elara protested gently, but she was met with smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Chloe began taking meetings without her. Fiona would lock herself in the office and emerge with numbers Elara didn't recognize. The brand was changing. It no longer breathed Elara's soul. It coughed up data. And then the rupture. One Tuesday morning, a letter arrived by courier. It bore a law firm seal. Elara opened it with trembling fingers. It was from Chloe. Cold, clinical, final. It stated that the business, Threads of Time, was now solely owned by Chloe and Fiona. Elara, the letter claimed, had become unstable, unprofessional, and emotionally unfit to continue. Her designs had been used to secure major funding. Chloe had registered the company and its intellectual property under her and Fiona's names. Elara, who had poured her life into every thread, was now legally entitled to nothing. It wasn't just theft, it was erasure. She sat in her silent shop for hours, the letter clutched in her hand. Her fingers, the ones that once created beauty, felt numb. Chloe, her soul sister, had turned her into a cautionary tale of naivety. Her trust weaponized, her art stolen, heartbroken, Elara did what she had always done in moments of pain. She turned to Marcus, but when she called, his voice was distant, cold. "Chloe told me you've been troubled lately," he said, "that you've been making possessive comments about me." Elara's breath caught. "What? Marcus, She said she's worried about you," he interrupted. "And frankly, so am I." The line went dead. The betrayal was complete. Not just her business, not just her friend, now her love, twisted into something grotesque. Elara disappeared. The shop closed, curtains drawn. Lily stayed by her mother's side, trying to patch a wound too deep for words. For weeks, Elara existed in a daze, her spirit buried beneath grief and humiliation. She wept until her tears ran dry, until even the pain seemed tired. But healing often begins in the quiet. It was a simple act. One day, a neighbor brought her a tattered wedding dress. "I know you're not working right now," she said, "but no one else can save it." Elara's fingers hovered over the lace. The thread called to her. Slowly, she began to mend. As the needle moved, something in her stirred. Not vengeance, not pride, just the pure, steady rhythm of remembering who she was. Word spread. Quietly, humbly, she took in more work. Then came Lena. Lena was an old seamstress renowned for her historical reconstructions and costume designs. She had heard of Elara's fall and came to visit. A woman of few words, she looked at Elara's hands, her stitches, her eyes, and offered her a job. Elara joined Lena's atelier. It was an old-world studio with tapestries on the walls and the smell of cedar and lavender. Here she was not just respected, she was revered. Lena became her mentor, her anchor, and in that sanctuary, Elara remembered who she was. Meanwhile, threads of time began to falter. Without Elara, the soul of the brand had vanished. Chloe and Fiona pushed mass production, but the designs lacked depth. Clients noticed. Investors grew restless. Returns plummeted. Chloe tried to salvage it with aggressive marketing, but the garments, hollow imitations, rang false. And then came the gala, the Viridia Annual Fashion Gala, the crown jewel of the city's style scene. Chloe and Fiona had secured a spot. They planned their comeback. What they didn't know was that Elara had entered as well. Under a pseudonym, the Weaver of Memories. With Lena's encouragement, she had designed an entire collection, each piece inspired by Viridia's history. Velvet embroidered with constellations, gowns shaped by folklore, silks that shimmered like moonlight. It was a tapestry of identity, pain, and resurrection. On the night of the gala, the crowd buzzed with anticipation. Chloe and Fiona's line walked first. It was flat, uninspired, stitched with desperation. Then Elara's collection graced the runway. Gasps, silence, then applause. Every garment told a story. People wept. One piece, a gown of midnight blue with golden thread winding through like veins, stole the breath from the room. Among the judges sat Marcus. He leaned forward, recognition blooming in his eyes. He had seen this embroidery before, once on a handkerchief Elara had given him. A signature, a golden thread of hope. The judges announced the winner, the Weaver of Memories. Then a twist. The head judge revealed that one of the judges had helped authenticate a garment's technique. That judge was Marcus, and he, with trembling voice, spoke of a love once buried. He spoke of Elara. And Elara stepped forward. The crowd stood. Chloe and Fiona in the front row turned pale. Elara walked with grace, not revenge, not anger, but power born of pain, transformed. She was awarded $1 million partnership with a fashion house. In that moment, Elara didn't look at Chloe. She looked at Marcus. He stepped forward, his eyes filled with regret and something else, hope. Later that night, in the quiet after the storm, he found her. "I believed a lie," he said, "and I lost you." Elara, her heart no longer silent, whispered, "You never had to find me. I was always here." They stood in silence, then embraced, not as people rediscovering love, but as two hearts mending what the world had torn. Elara launched her brand under her own name. Her atelier flourished. Chloe's business dissolved into bankruptcy. But Elara never spoke ill. She didn't need to. Her art spoke louder than revenge. Her garments became known not just for beauty, but for truth. Each one bore her golden thread, a symbol of memory, of healing, of a woman who was never truly broken, only waiting to be woven back into herself. And so, Elara's story became more than fashion. It became legend, a tale of betrayal, resilience, love, and the quiet, unstoppable strength of a woman who remembered who she was.